Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is an entrepreneur coach. His name is Alec Sorenson, and you can find him at easierhabits.com, which sounds great because I feel like being playful, you need some easy habits. Everybody's trying the hard habits like losing weight, Alex, or, working out and stuff. I feel like let's make some easy habits. Let's have more game nights. Let's eat more delicious food, play more games. How's that sound?
That sounds great. And I think even the quote unquote productive habits, if you pick the right one, it can be easier. You're just picking the wrong habit. It's not you, it's the habit.
Talk it out. Here we go. Again, you can find Playful Humans at playfulhumans.com. Take our personality quiz there and find out which playful personality you have at playfulhumans.com/quiz. And we like to start with the joke of the week. It is brought to you by patience. Patience is what you have when there are too many witnesses. Patience. What did the left eye say to the right eye, Alec?
I don't know.
Between you and me, something smells around here. All right, that's not a bad one. I'll take that and call it a win. So let's start with your story a little bit here, Alec, because I feel like it's not unusual. Almost everybody we have on the podcast goes through some sort of transformation, life change moment. Some people we interview are lucky. They just play from the time they were kids all the way through, and they got it straight into what their passion and calling was. I wasn't that lucky, and from what I know of your story, you weren't either. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I've always been a geek. I've always made time for playing, but the easier habits part, like that whole epiphany did come out of a little bit of a struggle. My version of play often is exploring new things. My wife wanted to move to Japan for a while, and so we lived there for a year and a half. I'm like, why not? Just take a break and try something new. She was running a school up there. I had been an engineer, and I took a break. And what I found when we, traveled up the mountain to this very remote town, like year-round population, less than 100, in the dead of winter, January, lots of blizzards, not a lot of places to go. We got into our small, cold, drafty apartment. Japanese people do not believe in central heating or quite as much insulation as we do. And so we got there and we're like, fine, we'll cover up with the blankets. But the other thing that I had not been prepared for, in addition to living in the middle of nowhere in this kind of cold, blizzardy town, feels like Alaska to me, was that I was horribly allergic to our apartment because Japan is more humid. There's more mold there. So what I found really right off the bat was that, especially in some rooms, my throat would close up, so I'd barely be able to breathe. I'd be gasping. Like I roll out of bed 6 a.m. to get the kids, or 4 a.m. probably because of jet lag, and play with the kids a little bit, and I'm just lying there gasping, and they're kind of poking me like, Dad, are you okay? Are you okay? I get some medicine for it. But I realized if I want to live with any quality of life here, I need to figure out how to beat allergies. And I always thought that's just genetic. There's nothing you can do about it. So I dived into the research and actually discovered there are a lot of things you can do about it. All sorts of things, from drinking more water, brushing your teeth more, which I hadn't realized was a thing. And another one of the suggestions was yoga. So I just tried out everything all at once. I wore a face mask for a whole month or two, and everyone thought I was terminally ill or something, because in Japan you only wear those when you're sick. But I was trying to see if that would filter out the allergens. Tried a whole bunch of things, and eventually found out that even 5 to 10 minutes of yoga a day would give me hours of not being allergic. And so I had my whole life, I beat myself up that I'm not the kind of person that can have a routine or keep habits. I don't have the discipline. But when you actually have a habit that has a positive impact in your life, it's not just something you feel you should do, then not only is it fun to do when you're doing it, but you miss it when you don't. You feel the difference, right? And so when you've been flogging yourself that you don't have the right habits or you can't keep a habit, it's probably just because it's something you feel like you should do, but you're not seeing a benefit, and your brain is trying to help you, by saying like, don't do this, save your energy, like do something more worthwhile.
Well, I love that message, really. And I think the allergies is interesting too. I had really bad allergies to cats and mold and hay fever and stuff when I was a kid. And now I don't take anything almost all year round. Every once in a while, I'll have to take something. But my wife made it clear, she had two cats when we met, that it was at some point the cats were not leaving, so I could choose to live somewhere else, or I could figure out how to live with the cats, and
Nice.
we did that too. So I think that part is interesting about the human body, but I'm more interested in the habit part, because I've kind of found that too. There's such a I think misconception in the culture, and I'd love to hear your take on it, especially with entrepreneurs, because in startup world, it's like the grind and the hustle, and everybody's like trying too hard. And if you don't scale, you're not winning. And nobody ever says like, hey, a $4 million business is more money than you're going to need. Why don't you just stay at 4 million and enjoy your life? Or, that maybe if you worked 40 hours and you didn't kill yourself, you'd come up with a better idea to solve that problem than if you work 80 hours, like you said, flogging yourself, trying to bust through this plateau. I think there is a time and a place for hard work, but usually, for me anyway, that effort comes when, like you already said too, I'm passionate about something. That when I'm, outside playing soccer with my nieces and nephews, or at the pool or the beach, I don't have to work very hard to expend a lot of energy and to do a lot of physical labor. But, if it's something I don't want to do, like raking leaves or something else, that it takes, twice as much, sometimes 10 times as much energy. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. There's a number of things you touched on. I mean, one is like the killing yourself to try and get results, right? I was just looking at Ryan Holiday's feed, and he was saying on Twitter, your secret to success, go the F to sleep. Right? So a lot of times in trying to push too hard, we actually make ourselves less productive. And the root of that is that actually very often we don't even know what productive means or what success means for us. Going back to your 4 million quote, like people are chasing more money. People like growth. Like growth does help bring happiness very often, like the process, not the achievement of a goal particularly. But if you don't know what that means for you, you tend to put yourself on these brutal treadmills, because it's never enough if you don't know what your actual target is. You might have blown past it. That's actually something some of my clients say is like, sometimes like they'll say they alternated between weeks where they felt like they weren't productive because they weren't doing anything and they're procrastinating. But one of the things they realize when we start working and like drawing out, like, what are your long-term goals? What are your weekly goals? They'll realize like, actually, I am achieving something. And I probably was before, I just didn't realize it because I never specified what I was trying to do. So it never felt like enough. So there's a lot of psychology there. But in terms of like finding your passion, one of my go-to steps to like get past a break, rather than just grinding harder, is like, all right, what would it look like if I did this for something I enjoyed? So I had a client, for example, who had a Discord community for like a technical group, and I wanted to learn more about that. And I could, watch videos about that or like study that, read books or whatever. I could make this like school homework, and that would be really boring, even though I kind of like school, but still. But the other thing I could do, I'm a huge RPG nerd. You can see like my Dungeons and Dragons books up there. I'm like, I could start a Discord server dedicated to having like one-shot games every other Friday in Dungeons and Dragons or lesser known RPGs. And that would be fun. And so I did that. I went on Reddit or Facebook groups, like advertised my group, build my Discord group, made tons of mistakes, but that's kind of the exact idea. I learned by like, most people online are consumers. So if I just advertise to the general public, what I'm going to get is a lot of people lurking and not very many people running games. Like I have to be much more specific, right? And it would have been much better for me to build a community of 10 very active people first, and then invite other people in once I know we had like a regular rotation running games, than just advertise to like the general populace. And this is like something, I've heard this and I've read this in books tons of times, like the, start with your super fans and all of that. Like it's not, it's not new information, right? But people don't need information, they need practice. And play, not just for humans, but for all sorts of animals, is actually how you get into practice.
Yeah, there's some crazy science around that it takes like 400 repetitions to learn something if you're trying really hard at it, but it only takes like 30 repetitions if you're playing at it. So if you're teaching the same skill through a game, and all kinds of cool videos on YouTube and stuff. Even Mark Rober, the science guy, physics guy on YouTube, he has an awesome like TED talk that he did that showed using Super Mario Brothers here in my background, that like you could program people to hit a whole bunch of buttons in an exact sequence that they could never do if it was work by setting it up as a game. And I think that part's really interesting. But going back to our theme of our conversation here, I'm a marketing guy, and I found that to be so true about what you said with the raving fans and the audience. Is you can try really hard on social media to get 1 million followers, but the people who have 1 million didn't start by trying to do that. They started with something really specific for people that they like, or something that even they like themselves and they didn't know there was an audience for, and they were having so much fun with it, then it happened to scale. But anybody that plans to go mass media usually doesn't work out, because you're not hitting any chords with anybody to get traction. And on social media, and also I think in life, it's the engagement that matters, not the audience or what you're trying to do, or the number of people you can interrupt and blast a message to. It's the number of people that are paying attention to that message that matters.
Yeah, well, and Seth Godin had an interesting TED talk way back in the day that it's not essentially not about the first person who starts a movement. It's about the second person who joins them, who shows other people that this is a cause worth joining, that actually really makes a movement. So that's kind of to your point. And I had that experience myself. I'm still going through that as a coach. There's a lot of traditional coach marketing. And when I first got on, I was bombarded with messages from other coaches like, this is how you build a 6-figure business in a month with, with this one crazy secret. And, I talked to some of these people who, some of them there's even like tons of like coaches of coaches, which sometimes makes it feel a little too like multi-level for me. But one was trying to recruit me and gave me kind of that message. And I'm like, oh, so you had someone who had those results. Is that typical? After that, just silence. And so like I could spend all my time trying to replicate, the messaging of this person who's not even getting those results. So I'm like, no, I need to figure out.
Well, there's a lot of that, but also if they're teaching that, there's 1,000 other people with that same message, which means you're not unique. And so they could pick anybody. And when you get in, I feel like your playful personality, when you get into who you authentically are, when you're doing something weird and unusual, that's when people pay attention. That's when people are like, whoa, what's that? I've never seen that before. And you have a better chance of, whether that's going viral, attracting your first client, or any other good things that you want to do in business.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Lean into what you want to do. So my first coaching client actually came as a referral from someone when I was, before I'd made the transition, I wanted to like test out like, all right, I have a background in instructional design, but does that translate to coaching, and do I enjoy coaching? And so I was testing that out just by like volunteering, like, hey, anyone want help with their goals on Facebook, just like friends, family, and found some people that would benefit from coaching, and had some great conversations. I enjoyed it immensely. And then out of that, came actually my first couple of referrals. So that was so much more powerful than like trying to ape somebody else's marketing language online.
Yeah, I want to get back to your sweet spot topic there too, with easier habits and goal setting, because I have a long history of personally, because I've been in kind of the self-improvement training business a long time too, instructional design as well. But it, for me, I really nerded out on like Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, and all of the other stuff, Tim Ferriss and everything. And I was optimizing even essentialism and minimalism stuff. Essentialism by Greg McKeown is an awesome book. But I kind of found that like, even then I was trying too hard to measure things and set goals and optimize my day, that it kind of sucked the fun out of it. So my question for you is, I'm still struggling with the balance. Like, I had a amazing day on Sunday. I hosted 4 game shows for people.
Fun.
So I made money. I had a ton of fun. All the groups were great. And then we had a company party to go to in the afternoon, and it was a blast. We went to this axe
Mhm.
throwing place, and my wife and I had a great time. There was a ton of fun and laughs. You know, when that axe hits like the wall hard and just bounces back, you feel like such an idiot. But then when it like sticks in a bullseye, you feel like so great. It was an amazing roller coaster of experience. But after like 12 hours of play, I was exhausted. And there's no way I could do that every single day. I skipped
Mhm.
lunch because I was working through lunch and all kinds of
Mhm.
things that weren't great either. So I feel like people can go overboard either working too hard or playing too hard, and they have a really hard time finding a balance. Is there such a thing? Do you think that's possible? Or I already love what you said that, you know, sometimes it's that challenge, it's that goal or that growth that makes it more interesting, not the balance.
Well, so this is from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Happiness Hypothesis, where he talks about the happiness you get from a goal is like relief from taking off a big, heavy backpack, right? You feel it for a moment, but pretty soon you're back adjusted to not having it, and that's the new normal. And what you really want is regular growth. And that's hard. It's hard for someone like me, for example. Like I am definitely converted to habits, but at the same time, I am not someone who loves routine. And a lot of creative people are people who don't love routine for its own sake. And so there may be habits that you just need that your day doesn't work without. So if I don't do this weird Wim Hof breathing, this is actually like the evolution of my yoga. Like Wim Hof breathing for me is biologically the perfect habit where it kind of kicks my allergies, and also like that midday slump where like I'm tending to fall asleep around like 1 or 2 o'clock actually doesn't occur. Like it gets rid of that for me. And so like that is something I do need every day. And I still skip it sometimes, but I notice it enough to like it's not willpower that brings me back to it. It's the fact that like, oh, I will feel so much better today. But there's other things like my exercise is often like a placeholder, and I rotate out like Tai Chi, jogging, jumping rope. I went swimming yesterday because I hadn't done that enough, right? So I have this quote unquote routine or habit of exercise, and it's different, you know, week to week, or sometimes if I just really need a break, you know, day to day. So so that you can kind of schedule time to do something different, which is helpful. Sometimes if you get to that time and it is, and you're a very spontaneous person, you probably won't have time filling it. People who are less spontaneous like might have to like plan out different object or like different topics or different activities for each day, right? But there's a balance there. And then, you know, I talk to people, for example, who say if I'm not working hard enough to have like a couple burnout days a month, I'm not trying hard enough. And they've just accepted that. Like they budget in their time, like maybe I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to have at least 2 days where I'm just going to crash, and maybe I'm watching YouTube and like eating potato chips all day or something. You know, you can make time for that if that's how you work. It just, what I'm a big fan of is knowing who you are and working with that rather than guilting yourself, right?
Yeah.
Just okay, if your natural rhythm is doing too much, and Sunday was awesome, but you couldn't keep that up every day, well then make a schedule where you do that some days and other days you don't. And that's
Yeah,
that's
I
just as
think
fine.
that's I think the hard part, because I love what you said too. I think it's okay to take days off. I hate that like no days off culture and stuff like that's just a
Mhm.
really, you know, easy way to burn yourself out and not have any fun. I think it should be all days off, but even that doesn't work very well either, because I hate the quote that you know, if you find what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. I think you still have to pay taxes. There's still days you don't feel like it,
Yep.
and you got to do it anyway. And I think those are the decisions where you mentioned, you know, the magic word willpower, where it gets sticky is sometimes it is in our best interest to use a little willpower and go to the gym because we feel
Hmm.
better when we come out of the gym. But other days, if we're, you know, I don't know, trying to make a bunch of phone calls and we just don't have it, and we're not in the right space or mindset, or um it depends on the personality, but it's a bunch of detailed work, right? And it's
Mhm.
time to file your taxes, but you're exhausted from doing game shows and axe throwing for a day. That's probably not the best time to sit down and do 3 hours of taxes and force yourself to do it either.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? Do you have any recommendations of how we choose that, or how we know when to listen to our body, and when maybe, if we only eat junk food, that's not going to be great for us either?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I was exaggerating a little bit on that. Like, actually, the person I'm talking about is a little bit type A, and like, I think she might have cut out carbs completely. So,
Yeah.
like, um, but there are things that she does enjoy eating. She knows what those are. So, in terms of like that balance, I think one of the major things you should realize is that willpower is a temporary fix, right? It can burn out. I have actually back there one of those orange books up on my shelf is The Willpower Instinct, and it's a book I like a lot, partially because it talks about how like shaming yourself for not having enough willpower is counterproductive, and how it's a muscle, and like you can exercise it to get it stronger, but also it still needs rest sometimes. So those are all like areas where it's like, I think we overdo that. I think sometimes we feel like if something is good and we don't want to do it, and it requires willpower, we just need to use willpower every day, and that's setting yourself up to fail eventually. And then like that's just because it's not you, that's how human biology works. You're setting yourself up to work against human biology, because the reason you need willpower is because you don't find it rewarding. And so there are different ways to take this, right? You need something rewarding in your day. It doesn't have to be every activity, and there is some grind to everything. So like part of that balance there is finding a mix. So making sure that if you're planning your taxes, maybe you're planning something else that is more rewarding that day. Maybe it's alternating days. Maybe it's planning downtime. Again, I think that's another thing. If left to my own devices, I'll be really honest, I will fill my head constantly with like YouTube or articles or books or like other people's voices all day, every day. And that takes a toll, even if it's play or work, right? Not having the space to think your own thoughts is not healthy. It doesn't allow your brain to kind of process some of the things that are going on and rest, right? It's constantly in gathering information mode. So, I mean, I think, that's the balance there where you're looking at, work activities, you're looking at play activities. You're successful if you can convert some of those work activities into play activities. But, the other thing you don't want to forget are the rests that feeds into both of those.
Yeah, I second all of that, and we must just be very similar, because I'm the same way. I can watch YouTube, listen to podcasts, or read self-help books all day long, and it makes me feel good, but it can get into like an unhealthy place, I would say, where you're not feeling like you're good enough where you are if you're constantly trying to improve and stuff. So definitely the pause and the recreation, letting go of some of that helps a lot. There was one good book too. I read Willpower Doesn't Work by Ben Hardy. Is a great, great book. So Ben Hardy is a great follow for anybody as well. I wanted to ask you more about the play and the fun stuff though. So we've talked about a lot of the hard stuff. You mentioned if you can take some work and turn it into play, I think that's great. If you can take some play and turn it into work, that works too. But if you take all of your play and turn that into work and try and monetize it, then you don't have anything left for yourself. That's really just truly recreation. It doesn't matter. You're not getting paid to do it. It's just for you and for fun. So I'm interested to know how you balance that personally. What do you do that's just for you? You're not trying to monetize. It's just fun. I see the guitar behind you. What that or what else in your world is just play?
Yeah, that guitar is a good example, just because, I mean, it's something I wanted to learn for fun, so I could play a few of my favorite songs in college. It kind of became like in my angst outlet in college. So like all the angsty songs from the 90s and early 2000s that I grew up with. I learned on the guitar. Yeah. So I definitely grew up with a lot of very depressing rock. So that's what I naturally gravitate towards. But yeah, if I had to get good at that, and if I had to do that to get paid, that would drive me nuts, right? So that's one of those things. I have my Dungeons and Dragons books up there. I don't really need to be paid for that. I think there are projects like I do kind of for work where like if I want to learn a business skill, I'll translate it into role-playing games because it feels more like a game. And so I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to doing that, but I wouldn't translate all of that to to work. For example, I would reserve a part for myself. One thing that was interesting apropos of that, like just that exact point, one of the biggest names in Dungeons and Dragons is Critical Role, a group of voice actors that videotape themselves playing. And if you actually listen to Matt Mercer in some of his interviews, he mentions like someday it would be nice to take back our personal game, because this was originally a bunch of friends who were just playing, and now it's become like a multi-million-dollar business. And good for them, and they enjoy it. They're not ungrateful for that, but at the same time, like just like you said, there was an aspect I think they lost having it just between themselves and just for themselves. And so, whatever that is, on your own or with a group of friends, put that into your schedule. And so, I have a bi-weekly or semi-weekly, whatever, every other week Dungeons and Dragons group, which is one of those things that like, all right, I can just do that just for fun. I can just kick back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really great advice for everybody listening there, is if you could take a piece of it, like you said, if there's a piece of software or some creative writing that you can, after you're done with it, sell and make a little bit of money or something, or it makes sense to practice a business skill, then that's cool. If not, just do it for you. And I think even if I was giving advice to those guys, I would start a second game. We got one game for them and one game that we're just playing for ourselves, and find a different group, because I found that a lot too in the stuff that I've done from radio to game shows and other training. Is it's really fun to do when you want to do it, and it's really not fun to do when you're getting paid to do it and you don't want to be doing it that day. Anything else you would recommend on how we reignite play or creativity when we get off track and we're feeling like we're burnout, or we're feeling like we've lost a habit that we wanted? Because I think, to tie it back to your easy habits and easyhabits.com, easierhabits.com, sorry. Sometimes I feel like I lose even habits that I enjoyed, or routines, or, especially with the pandemic, things shift and just, they fall off. And maybe sometimes it's for natural reasons, but other times you're like, man, I used to really love doing that, and for some reason I'm not doing it anymore. What would you recommend?
Well, let's get more specific. All right. You said there are habits like that for you with the pandemic. What habit?
We had a regular friends night, and I'm also kind of at that age where our friends all had kids and stuff too. So like they had soccer games on the weekends, so we can't have our normal couples date night kind of thing on the weekends or anymore. And they just kind of, something like that falls off. Like, hey, we used to love going out and doing karaoke and stuff. And then it's like, we got either to an age or a time where karaoke nights just didn't happen anymore.
I mean, that sounds a little bit like a scheduling conflict. And that is one of the things that as you grow and change, so does your schedule, so does the schedule of your friends or coworkers or whatnot. So that is a process. I mean, that's one of the reasons why actually I have a job as a coach, is I can help people with habits, but then their life will change. They will either need new habits or figure out how to adapt the old ones they wanted to that. And so really what that is, I think you're describing is when you get out of touch with a habit, chances are you're not checking in with yourself about what you really want to do. And that happens naturally. Again, like I am the enemy of like, don't blame yourself. This is not about you're a bad person or you're lazy. It's like that naturally, that's what happens is you lose habits as your schedule changes because it doesn't work out. And the cues you had before, it's Saturday, let's hang out with these people, or, whatever, Friday night, let's do karaoke. Since you can't do that anymore, you don't have cue, you don't have habit. Like, again, just biologically, the habit falls apart. It's not on you. But, then if that is something you miss, you have to figure out what that looks like in your new schedule. And so that's the process of like checking in however often you want to do it. I find like a weekly check-in for me, for example, of like, what did I enjoy this week? What was like pulling teeth? What did I learn? Like just bullet points. Again, like often if I have to write a journal or think too deep, I won't do it. It's too much work. Don't want to do it. I'll be lazy. But if I check in weekly with that, I'll catch some of those things and figure out an alternative strategy. So my example.
Let me ask you one more
ahead.
then. This will be our last question because I think this is right up your alley and mine. Is I just bought a new bicycle, and I used to love riding bikes as a kid. Part of it was the social aspects with my brother and our friends and stuff. But I also had kind of experimented with it last year and stuff, and had a ton of fun renting a bike and just getting out there. But I bought the new bicycle. I got all the bells and whistles, like totally did it up so it would be fun and enjoyable, and got everything I needed. And the first day I went out was Saturday, and this was right before my big, busy day. And I was like, all right, don't kill yourself. It's the first ride. And I totally blew it. One of my earbuds fell out, so I ended up doubling back like a mile or two, and did not realize how big the hills were between me and where I wanted to go, the park for fun. And so I was just like super sore the next day. So Monday I said, I'm just going to get on the bike and go as far as I can go just for fun. I'm going to stay next to the creek, so it's all flat, and not going to try anything hard, just so I can keep that routine up. But then the cold front comes through and other stuff, and I feel like this is a new habit that would be fun for me and playful. I definitely want to ride the bike. What recommendations in this to make a fun, easy habit?
I mean, you identified it right there in the overdoing, and a lot of people do that. They do it in two situations, right? They do it when they're trying something new and they're overambitious, right? They want to be like an expert right away, so they dive in and do too much, and so they get sore, or they get tired out, or it's not sustainable, right? It doesn't become a habit. It's really hard to start an hour a day habit. That's a heavy lift. If you're not used to that, it is fairly easy to start a 10 to 15 minute a day habit. And so one of those is just starting smaller. And the other situation in which people tend to overdo it is if it's something they've done before, but they haven't done for a while, right? We remember what we used to do, and we want to start back in at the same scale, right? And so just as you identified, like, all right, don't overdo it. Take it a little bit at a time. And so if you commit to 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes it depends on the person. Like if they're constantly overdoing it, I might just say, like, actually commit to only doing 10 to 15 minutes and do that regularly rather than going for the hour or 2 hours like once a month. But for other people who maybe haven't gotten into it before, it's not a habit they're likely to find as addictive or whatever. They're trying productivity habits or other habits, and they're worried that they're not going to do enough. I'll say, like, commit to at least 10 to 15 minutes and allow yourself to do more only if you want to, and allow yourself to quit that habit if you're not seeing the results. So kind of depends, but yeah, just like limitations. We don't like to limit ourselves, but they are so often helpful. And that's one of the keys to an easier habit, actually, is just keeping it a smaller habit, at least at start. And you can scale that up.
I like that. Yeah, that's really good advice for a whole bunch of stuff. Is rather than using your willpower on starting, use your willpower on finishing. Would probably make things a lot easier. I like that. All right, it's time to play a game. Are you ready to play?
Yes, I'm ready to play.
You got awkward questions. Awkward questions is one of my favorites, and I got a couple of good ones for you here. What would you rather rid the world of, lawyers or cigarettes?
My dad is a lawyer, so that makes this one somewhat easier. I do actually happen to like my dad, so I will say cigarettes.
The profession of law, not the people.
Harder. We'll stand by my.
All right. If you consumed too much alcohol, would you be more likely to dance with a lampshade on your head or start a fight?
Ooh. I took dance in high school, so I would have to say probably the dance with a lampshade on my head.
All right, good. These are weird ones today.
Yep.
All right. Which would embarrass you more? Belching while being interviewed on a local television newscast, or losing your bathing suit at a small local pool?
So we're talking about, we're trying to balance here the amount of embarrassment versus the amount of exposure.
Yes.
And I mean, I could simulate that first one right now by trying to belch. Let me see if I can pull it off.
On command.
All right, trying. Who knows how successful?
Wow.
Ultimately, not that embarrassing. I feel like the bathing suit one would be more embarrassing for me.
I feel I agree with you on all of those. I think, yeah. Belching, I've been on enough microphones that there are just, parts of the human body. That's a natural thing. It's awkward, but you can laugh at it. And then the other one, yeah, it feels like more exposure. That's not, natural in our world today. But you successfully answered all three, which means you win, and a free 30-second commercial here for you. Any asks or gives for our audience? How can we help you or you help us?
I mean, my first ask is, if you don't think you're good at habits, shotgun it. Make a list of 10 things you might enjoy. Give yourself permission to try them all and quit them if they don't work for you. I mean, that's just like my main message. Make big changes one small habit at a time is my main thing. If you're interested in learning more, or learning, for example, how you can harness the power of good habits in your business, then go ahead on over to easierhabits.com.
That is it. Alec Sorenson. You can find him at easierhabits.com, as he just mentioned. If you want to find more on Playful Humans, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are hearing or watching it right now, and share the episode with somebody else that you think needs to hear it. That would help us out a ton. There are other cool things at the website too. You can take a playfulness quiz. You can check out some of our tutorials and other advice for finding more play or rediscovering the power of play for adults at playfulhumans.com. Until next time, if you can't be good at it. That's what I always say.
Thanks, Mike.